Sir, it's from you? A salute. Very nice of you. Thank you. Oh, Merry Christmas. Salute. Salute.
I noticed
I dare you to open it now.
they're able to be open.
Call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the invocation. Pastor Ken Brown from Fountain Hills Presbyterian Church is here with us today. Pastor?
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here with you all, and let me ask you to pray with me, please. Father, I pray for each of these council members tonight as they deliberate on important issues related to our town. I'm thankful to be able to live here in this beautiful place and be a part of this wonderful community, and I ask your blessing on each person that's here tonight, all the citizens that have concerns, and I pray that you'll give wisdom to the council members, to Mayor Kavanaugh, to each of the people represented in this room, and I pray that everything that's discussed tonight will be discussed in a fair and even-handed way, and we will give you thanks. It's in the name of our Savior I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Roll call, please, Bev.
Mayor Kavanaugh.
Here.
Vice Mayor Yates.
Present.
Councilmember DePorter.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Hanson. Here. Councilmember Magazine.
Here.
And Councilmember Leger.
Here.
Okay, let's see. I'll start off with my report on economic development. I just want to report on the two meetings that I had at MAG, and one is the regular economic development meeting, the other is the regular MAG meeting. Pulled out some issues that I felt were important to Fountain Hills. At the MAG Economic Development Committee meeting, there was a presentation, a study on engaging retired adults in contributing their expertise to the community. The two most significant points made in the study: to retain interest in volunteerism from retired adults, which will allow retirees to choose what they want to do and choose the amount of time they wish to donate. I continue to pass along information to Heather Ware, our volunteer coordinator, so that we can benefit from these MAG studies to improve our volunteer program, which is a great help in keeping our staff expenses down. There was a report on community gardens by St. Luke's Health Initiative. This organization works with communities to establish not only community gardens, but also farmers markets to create and sustain healthy food environments. They're a good source of information for us since we now have 2 farmers markets in town. At the MAG Regional Council meeting, there was some lengthy discussion about a census test that they'll be doing in a select region of our county. There were many questions from the council on the validity of the test, the questions being asked, and the privacy factor. There were also major concerns about using this data to possibly redirect state shared revenue. Census Bureau responded that this was only a test, but the council still seemed a little uneasy about how this data could be used. Phoenix will be adding 5 miles of light rail transit on Central Avenue from Washington Jefferson to Baseline. The extension will be paid for with a % sales tax in Phoenix, and we were assured that all operation costs will be covered by the cities it will service. It was important to make sure that Fountain Hills residents would not be covering the cost of construction of the light rail or operational issues, including subsidies. The presenter could not tell me about the overall percentage of ridership in general on the light rail lines. She did say that they have changed operation procedures, so they're now seeing between 90% and 95% payment of fares on all lines. There's been quite a bit of fare evasion since the light rail first started service. Through our taxes, we do pay some of the cost of regional transportation, so it's reasonable to expect them to ensure that the ridership pays their fair share. At the request of City of Glendale and Maricopa County, MAG 208 Water Quality Management Plan will be amended to include the West Valley Regional Water Reclamation Facility. Some of the questions raised by the council concerned protection from contamination of Luke Air Force Base. I was particularly interested in this segment since EPCOR is involved in the project. There was also a support for acceleration of State Route 189 project, which will relieve the huge bottleneck and congestion coming out of the Mariposa port of entry to facilitate commercial truck traffic from Mexico. They're expecting an increase of commercial truck traffic from Mexico from an average of 1,600 to 3,000 trucks per day at the peak of produce season 2015. Economically, this is good for us since this new bypass will allow more produce to be shipped faster and therefore fresher and in greater numbers. Hopefully, that will ensure a lower price at the grocery stores for us. And that's my report. And now we have a presentation by Executive Director Ken Strobeck and Deputy Director Tom Belshey regarding the Council Manager form of government. Both are from the League of Arizona Cities and Towns. Hi, Ken.
Hello, and thank you, Mayor. I'm glad you were doing the report. I'm sorry the traffic was a little more than I expected to come across town, but...
Not the traffic in Fountain Hills, though, right?
No, not at all. No, thank you for inviting us to come out and make this presentation. We're happy to do this for you this evening. I'm going to go through these first few slides rather quickly because what I want to talk about, as you mentioned, Mayor, is what you've asked us to talk about is the council manager form of government. Now, local government is, advocates for local government consistently talk about cities and towns as the level of government that's closest to the people, the level of government that's most responsive. And in fact, in a public opinion survey that the League commissioned a couple of years ago, we asked a number of questions about what do you think of various levels of government, and by a more than 2-to-1 margin, the citizens of Arizona said they trust their cities and towns to spend money wisely and to make wise decisions more than any other level of government, by more than 2-to-1 margin. So I think that's a real tribute to you and to your colleagues and other city and town councils across the state, because we are closest to the people and we do listen and we are responsive. But I also would believe, and I would testify, that the presence of the council manager form of government as the strongest type of government that we have in Arizona is another reason for that factor, and that's because it makes a very bright line between the policy making that you all do and the approval of budgets, the visioning and the communication with the citizens versus the actual... Am I not on? Now I'm on.
versus the administration, in other words, carrying out the directives from the council. That's done by a staff of professional people hired on the basis of professional credentials. So we have a very bright line between policy making and the goal setting and the decisions made for vision and for the direction of the city versus the actual administration and the on-the-ground implementation of your policies. And so we'll talk about that as we get through the presentation. Just very briefly, let's go over what we're talking about. Local government in Arizona derives its authority from the state constitution and from the statutes. Cities and towns are authorized to be created in the Arizona Constitution. And one thing that's very important is the legislature, the governor, cannot create cities and towns. They are created only by the people who live in them and the people who choose to live in them. It's a voluntary level of government. You don't have to live in a city or town, but nearly 80% of our residents of the state do. So that's what local government is. The 91 incorporated cities and towns are in Arizona. We have 15 counties and many other types of what we would call local government, special districts, that are single-purpose activities, water districts, fire districts, etc., school districts, more than 600 altogether, but only 91 of those are cities and towns. And the cities and towns and the counties generally operate under the council-manager form of government. Cities and towns also are what we call general-purpose governments, as opposed to those special districts that are created for only one function. Each one of those districts still has an elected board, an elected group of people who make decisions and who set the vision and the priorities for those entities, but they are only allowed to get into one enterprise. Cities and towns can engage in pretty much anything that your citizens want you to engage in. So we're general purpose. We provide many different services, and the only three that are required statutorily are police, streets, and administration. Note that fire, parks, et cetera, are not on that list. It's not required, but it's something that people want for the quality of life. There's also a difference between general law cities and charter cities. Fountain Hills is a general law city, so that means you operate under the authority of the Arizona statutes. The cities that are charter cities have what they call the organic law that's been adopted by the people of that city as their own sort of city constitution. And until you actually change your government from a town to a city, you're prohibited from becoming a charter government. So only cities can adopt charters. Even though functionally there's no difference in statute between the authority of a city or town, that's the one distinction that there is. Also, some people with the decision regarding consolidated elections a while back have tried to say, well, we want a charter so that we can sort of be independent of the legislature. That has only been true in the case of the Supreme Court deciding that local elections are none of the legislature's business, and they really are a matter of local authority. So they've made two decisions at the state Supreme Court that have upheld charters over state statute, but only when it comes to local elections. So in that way, charters are a little bit of a get-out-of-jail card, but only as it has to do with local elections. Other matters that are of statewide concern, the legislature has preeminence. There are many state statutes on local activity in the budget and finance area, and elections, land use, water, etc. Title IX is where we find most of the statutes regarding cities and towns, but also Title 13. Title 35 has to do with budget preparations. Titles 42 and 43 with taxation. 43 is very important to us because that's where the formula is for shared revenue. Matters of strictly local concern versus statewide concern was what I was just referencing, and the courts have consistently said that the legislature has the authority to overrule cities and towns when it comes to matters of statewide concern. Now, on principles about how we govern, we are a representative system, not a direct democracy. In other words, the people of your town have elected you, the 7 members of the council, to make decisions on their behalf. So when an issue comes before you, we don't just say, okay, everybody in town get out your voting cards and you all vote on it. You are the people who have the vote. In the same way, you are conducting the business of the public. You are the stewards of the town, and the people who have elected you and to whom the city actually belongs have the right to come and see what you do and to watch your deliberations and how you make decisions, but they don't have the right to come in and make the decision for you or to vote. So it's a matter of you are the elected folks, and the people in the community have selected you based on your qualifications in history and values and so forth to make decisions for them about the town's business. So it's not your own business. People often say, well, we should run government like a business. I say, well, if that was the case, and you owned a hardware store and you decided tomorrow we're going to not carry paint anymore, you would take all the paint off the shelves tonight. You can't do that when you're the town, because the town doesn't belong to you. The town belongs to the people, and you are here to be stewards for them and to make decisions on their best interest, but you can't make those kind of changes on a dime because it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the people. But the way you get things done, again, a lone ranger on a council, a person who's always the no vote or who abstains or something like that, may have get some attention, but they are not effective, because the only way you get anything done is by a majority of working together. So it takes 4 votes to make pretty much any decision, and it's the same at the legislature. We always say that there's the little formula there. It takes 16, 31, and 1 in order to pass any law. At the state legislature, it takes a vote of 4 members of the council to pass a vote. As you know, you are all public figures, and what you say carries more weight than when you were a private citizen. So you don't really have the flexibility to just go out and make comments about whatever comes before you, because people take that with more seriousness. They take it with more impact because you do have the vote. You are the only 7 people in the town of Fountain Hills that can vote on matters that come before the council. So you do have a certain amount of power and influence. All of our business is done in the open. That's a principle of Arizona state government as well as local government. And our municipal governance structure is what we're going to talk mostly about tonight. So there are various forms of municipal management across the country. The ones most common are one is called town meeting. That's primarily back in the northeast part of the country. I was talking to a colleague of mine from Massachusetts. We had a question that came up among league directors about how much of your territory is incorporated, how much of the land mass of your state. And he said 100% from border to border, north, south, east, west, every inch of it is part of a city or a town or a village in Massachusetts. It's all municipal government. And they, in many cases, still have the town meeting form of government where in those situations, every member of the community is a voting delegate. Some will elect selectmen who will be on a council, but then they will have issues that come before the town meeting, and everybody has a vote. That's not the way we operate. There's the weak mayor system, which is found primarily in very small communities, where basically the mayor and the council together pretty much make policy as well as implement policy. That's where you don't have very much staff. In the strong mayor form, the mayor really holds all the marbles and is a person who can make the decisions for the city, actually runs the city, has the same duties as the manager and the mayor, and the council doesn't really have very much power at all. And then there's the commission form, which is kind of a hybrid of that, where the mayor will make appointments of various members of the council to head certain commissions. So one of you would head the police or the parks or whatever. But all those are not as common and not nearly as effective and efficient as the council manager form of government. They also fail to make the important distinction, as I mentioned at the outset, from policy making and administration. And that's a real key feature of the council manager form. Now, Tom is going to go into more detail on the actual way that this council manager system works, but I wanted to talk for just a couple of moments about the history of council manager. It was a product of the progressive era back in the early 1900s, early 20th century. And if you think about it, being the last state in the lower 48 to become a member of the United States of America, our Constitution was the last one written. It was written well into the 20th century, 1911, 1912. And other state constitutions were written 50 to 100, 150 years before that. And so they have very different values in their Constitution than we have in the Arizona Constitution. The Arizona Constitution, for example, has many features that would be completely foreign in a lot of other states, such things as initiative, referendum, recall. those were outgrowths of the progressive movement. And same with votes for women, direct election of U.S. senators, all those things, and the council manager form of government. They all came out of an effort to try to eliminate corruption and to professionalize the management of government. It's generally conceded that the first city manager position was created in Virginia in 1908, so it's been around about 100 years. And about a few years later, the International City Management Association, ICMA, was founded in 1914 as a way to promote professional and fiscal, or personnel and fiscal management by managers of municipal government. And so one of the most important features of ICMA is their code of ethics. It's something that they're very loyal to, that managers are very aware of and very committed to. And it talks about their obligations to refrain from political activity, to make sure that everything they're doing is on a very objective and professional basis and those kinds of things. And so that's where ICMA really does carry a lot of weight. ARS 9-303 allows cities and towns to have the council manager form of government in Arizona, and it also specifies in that actual statute that the manager always serves at the pleasure of the council. So as I said a minute ago, 4 votes makes the difference on any decision that you make, and that's something that professionals in the city management field always know, is that when they go into any assignment for a city or a town, they know that they are hired by the council and they report to the council. They're responsible. That's where you get this checks and balance of this particular system. Some people would just looking at it from the outside say, well, the manager has all the power. Where's the council? Well, the council has all the power because the council controls what the manager does ultimately by having the job performance be subject to your standards. There was an article in the Baltimore Sun that I like to quote from December 6, 2009, and it was headlined, "City's Governmental Structure Encourages Official Corruption." And the reporter David B. Levy writes, quote, "It is clear that developers and other interest groups perceive, probably correctly, that the best method to gain decisions in their favor is to grease the pathway. Sometimes that grease is pure corruption. More frequently, it is some version of interest peddling that does not quite rise to the level of outright corruption. Either way, it bends governmental decision-making away from the public interest toward the private interest of those that are doing the greasing." And he goes on to say, "The best managed and cleanest local governments in the United States are not strong mayor governments, they are council manager governments." And that's because the council manager system rests on the principles that decisions are made on objective standards and by professionals, not on the basis of favoritism, political contributions, cronyism, nepotism, or any of the other isms that you can think of. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll turn the program over to Tom. Okay?
No? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council, my name is Tom Belshey. Ask for your indulgence because I've got a little bit of a cold going on, and so I tend to lose my voice now and then, but hopefully I can make it through. It's a real pleasure for me to talk about this and to talk about something that I believe in strongly. And Ken and I, in the years that we worked together and the years that I've been working at the League, when the council and the staff know their roles, and they're both committed to those roles, things go very smoothly in the community, and the right kinds of decisions are made, and the city is able to do its business in a manner that it can be trusted by the community, and also makes the staff feel secure, and they know what they can do, and it's just a better system all the way around. And so there's some things that are common, first of all, with this type of a system. We have part-time, non-professional council members. You all have jobs. That's one of the reasons that you're chosen to be the policymakers of the community. You all have things that you're involved with in the community. You all have interests outside of this. Is not how you make your living. You make your living another way. You may even be retired, but it's your experience that people elect you for. It's your character and in your leadership that they want you to exercise when you're, and your judgment that they want you to exercise when you're a council member. So that's why the policy making is your area. Now, the other things that you spend a lot of time working on very important documents. The most important policy document that you work on is the budget. And that's one thing that we like to get across to councils is that the budget is a policy document. It is an indication of what your goals, what your values are for the community, and it's reflected in those line item budgets. Also, you work on things, general plans, zoning maps. Those are all reflections of your policy making. It's a vision that you set for the community 5, 15, 25, 50 years down the road. What are we going to look like? What kinds of things do we want to have in our community? And all of those decisions guide the day-to-day activities that are handled by the staff. And we'll get to their things in a few minutes. The visions and goals for the community are, that's what the citizens are really interested in. They're interested in the big picture. Now, sometimes cities come into contact with citizens on a day-to-day basis on other mundane things, but for the most part, they really care that you see the community in the same way. That's why they elect you, because you reflect the values that they have. And so one of the most important things you do on a policy level 2 is you hire professional management. It is very difficult, and it becomes more difficult every year to be a staff member and comply with all of the laws, both federal, state, and even some of the things that you do locally as staff members. It takes a lot of training. It takes a lot of time. It is a full-time job to be somebody who administers in the positions that you have. Your manager, your clerk, your attorney, your public works director, they all have very specialized training. As the league, we spend a lot of time working with your professional staff members, and we staff several of their professional associations. The City Manager Association, the Municipal Clerks Association, the Government Finance Officers Association, the Arizona City Attorneys Associations. Those are all bodies that we staff, and we provide them with the training, mostly because we know, again, the new laws that are coming through, and we bring in professionals that help them to understand what their job is. So it would be very, very difficult for a member of the council to keep up with that kind of training. That's one of the reasons why it's a protection. We're going to talk about that. This form of government is a protection to people who serve. When you serve on the council, unfortunately, that's one of the reasons cities and towns have liability insurance. There's all kinds of different ways the council members can get themselves in trouble. Okay, and so one of the things that we try to do is limit that, and one of the best ways to limit that is for you to operate in that public policy plane and not in the day-to-day administration. One of the other things that is important about the Arizona form is, as Ken mentioned, as part of the progressive movement, the recall. You are subject to recall, and so the reason that that's important is we're gonna compare this to the corporate model a little bit later, and so everybody in this system can be removed by the level in front of them. You can be removed by the citizens who are ultimately your boss. The manager can ultimately be removed by you because you're the manager's boss, and so there's a checks and balances system here. So let me move in now to the next area, which is what the manager is. Again, the way the manager is hired is they're hired for their expertise, their experience, and their training. Very, very important that those are the things that they're hired on. Again, it is part of the ethics of the International City and County Management Association that they not be connected with a campaign of anybody who serves on the council, especially, but there's even more of the things. But there should be a separation between the election process and the professional management. Those should be two completely different things. They're hired on their professional qualifications, and then what you turn over to them is that administration of managing the staff. When the staff has 7 different bosses, you can imagine that becomes very difficult for them. If you have a daily routine, and the manager has certain expectations for the job that you're going to perform, and then a council member comes in and tells you need to do something that's not a part of that priority that you received from your manager, and you get 2 or 3 council members, you can imagine that would be very distracting as an employee. And so that is one of the reasons now that does not mean, however, that you have no say in those kinds of activities, but those kinds of things need to go through the manager. But on the flip side, the manager is interested in carrying out your policy positions. When you provide direction to the manager, he will be held accountable by you for the performance on those policy positions. And normally you see, there's an annual review where you talk with the manager about those specific things you would like to see improvement on. And so that's a continuing relationship that you try to work on. And if there's good communication, then the manager knows exactly what kinds of things, what your priorities are, and it will be carried out. And you'll see that reflected again as they report back to you on what's happening with the budget and general plans, and et cetera, et cetera. So all of that policy and administration all should be kind of working in one big round. Now, sometimes that does not mean that the manager isn't involved in policy in any way, shape, or form. A lot of times, what you'll ask for as members of the council is policy alternatives. If there's a decision that needs to be made, you may want staff to come back and bring you several alternatives to consider and then provide a recommendation. That's an appropriate role in the policy-making decision for the manager. That is decided by each individual council and how they feel about those kinds of things. The manager serves at the pleasure of the council. 4 members of the council decide that they need to move in a different direction, the manager can be removed. Much the same way as if the community feels that you need to be removed, they have the option of going to do a recall. Again, these are the checks and balances that are in the system, but the manager is always subject to the pleasure of working at the pleasure of the council. And that's how the council's authority remains intact. So if this seems familiar to you, it was modeled after the corporate structure. Shareholders can be compared to citizens, and we'll go through the corporate structure, and then I'll flash over to the current city structure. Shareholders are like our citizens. They have a stake in what's happening with your company or the city, and they elect a board of directors. And that board of directors takes those values and policy direction that they hear from their stakeholders, and they hire themselves a chief executive officer to run the day-to-day operations of that company. And then, the different aspects, sales, research and development, those are all administered by the CEO under the policy direction of that board of directors. So, in the case, again, of the council manager form, citizens are at the top, the mayor and council are the board of directors, the city manager is the CEO, and the CEO works with the department heads to carry out the service priorities of the council. This process works very well when the manager doesn't try to improperly influence policy and the council doesn't improperly try to influence administration. And the most important thing, where it works the best, there is an open dialogue and open communication, and there's trust that is built. Anytime that there's a change or anyone is new and there's a relationship that needs to be formed, it's always a matter of developing trust. Once you have the trust and you know that they understand what your policy priorities are, again, where the council manager form is the most successful is where those managers listen to the council, and the council allows the manager to administer. Now, this is by far, except for the smallest cities in Arizona, very smallest cities, the council manager form of government is prevalent. We have 91 cities and all but the 4 smallest communities. And even it's interesting, Even in those communities where it's mostly they have a clerk and that's the only administrator they have locally, the council still in those communities oftentimes will treat them like a manager. That clerk will fill the same role that a manager does. And but it's been formally adopted in those 80. Let's see, I'm doing my math here. Is it failing me all of a sudden? 87 communities. So it's the most important one. Now, separation of powers, check and balance, objective performance standards, qualified professionals. Why is this important to you? Okay, again, I want to get back a little. I want to, again, bring up the issue of liability. We spend a lot of time, one of the things that we do, our newly elected officials training, is we talk a lot about all the kinds of things. We call them the hot water issues, all the things that can get you in hot water. Open meeting laws, nepotism, there's just a variety of things. One of the things that we like to make sure councils understand is when you have adopted the council manager form of government, when you get into the areas that the manager has to do as an administrator, you open yourself up to liability if you do things that are incorrect. This especially has to do with personnel issues, the direction of personnel and those kinds of things. So that is again, it's a protection to you to allow the manager to do that, because that is the role that's provided to him in your ordinances that make up your code. And so, as you know, that's another reason that we think it's really important to allow the manager to administer, because that's a protection to you, and it's a protection to the city's liability as well. Ken and I serve on the Arizona Municipal Risk Retention Pool, and the pool's attorney is always telling us to make sure that we emphasize with councils how important it is to make sure that everybody is playing the role that they were asked to do in their own codes. And so if you ever have any questions about that, your attorneys, and you have a good attorney, and the attorneys should be able to clarify what your roles are. And if you have any questions about the legality of things that you're looking into, I know that we have very qualified attorneys who are willing and able to do that. However, on the flip side of that, because you're turning over and that trust is going to the manager, staff needs to be open, they need to be accountable, they need to provide you with feedback on things that they're doing, you need to hear from them regularly, you need to, we think it's very important that you have a regular chat with your manager, you have a regular accounting of the things that the manager is doing. Ken talked a little bit earlier about the way that this helps to provide corruption or keep corruption at bay is that because there's no undue influence from you on the administration of the staff and the monies and everything else that comes through the town, then you maintain the trust of the community. Because just as you want the manager to earn your trust, the community looks at you to make sure that you're earning their trust and keeping their trust. If you're doing everything above board, if you're following all those things, if you're following the open meeting laws and everything all of those things are designed to make sure that the community has trust in the things that you're doing, that they can trust that you're carrying out things in a straightforward, open, and accountable way. So again, it's one level expects it of one level, and then that level expects it of the next level. And that's the way that there's a lot of checks and balances in the system. Again, we just want to reiterate, if you haven't had a chance to look at the Professional Code of Ethics of the International City County Management Association, it is a very strict thing, and they spend, believe me, at every single conference and training, there is an ethical aspect of the training that we go through. There's more than a dozen tenets that cover a lot of what the city manager does. And they spend a lot of time getting training on that, making sure that they're operating in an ethical bound. And they have trainers come out from the ICMA to talk with our managers, and they spend a lot of time talking about it, and it's important to them. So in conclusion, we just want to reiterate that the council manager form of government is an efficient, effective, open, accountable thing that protects you as council members in your duties as policymakers to your town. And with that, Ken and I would be happy to answer any questions you have.
All right. Questions from council for question?
Actually, Mayor, I was going to ask for some leeway. I had the opportunity to speak with Mr. Strobeck regarding the TPT tax and how it affects us, but I'll hold off until if there's any questions regarding municipal operations.
Anything? Okay, go for it.
Awesome. I had the opportunity, as I brought up, is this, I can bring this up at the end, but since we have them here.
Let's just move it forward to have that discussion now so that we can get the extra.
Motion to move this discussion up now, since we have them here.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm sorry, thank you. I just thought we'd take advantage since we have you guys here. Ken and Tom, if you guys could just kind of update us on how the TPT taxes with regard to sole proprietorship and buying product outside of the town and actually doing the work in the town, and how this affects specifically the collection of taxes in Fountain Hills.
You want me to go to that?
Sure.
Okay. We know that there is going to be, the construction industry has made it clear that they're going to run a bill to clarify several things about the newest changes that it came out of this continuing reform of the sales tax system, as they like to refer to it. So the biggest problem that the construction community has is that a lot of them are confused about, okay, when am I a sole proprietor? When am I just a repair maintenance person, and when do I fall under the construction category? We thought we were very clear with the wording that now exists in the state statute. The Department of Revenue came out with some interpretations that both the construction community and the cities and towns had grave concerns with. The biggest concern that a community like Fountain Hills should have is, what constitutes a major remodel, and what is the limit there. So we have been working. Now, I want you to understand, there's a long way from going to, we're having discussions to it's passing the legislature and everybody's, good to go. So, but the discussions that we've been having is, we have lost, I think, there's a group of people that are very small, repair, maintenance, contractors that simply, if they're plumbers, they go out and they change your garbage disposal, they put in your RI system. It's not construction. They're not plumbing a new home. They're not, running the, connections from the water system into a new home. This is a very specific set of activities they're doing. Those folks will no longer have to be licensed, and they will simply purchase at a local retailer. It may not be yours when they're working in Fountain Hills. They will purchase that, and they'll pay retail tax where they purchase the items. Now, there's a much larger and much more important group. You have those that are retailers that are contractors that are subs, so sometimes they do that repair work and maintenance work, and sometimes they're involved with actual construction activities. Those that are, if they're doing construction activities, and those contractors that are always in construction activities, nothing changes for them. It'll be the same as it's always been. They'll pay that percentage, the 65-35 split, that will remain the same. Now, there's that group in the middle that are the hybrids. A lot of times they're subcontractors, and other times they work in this kind of, just repair maintenance atmosphere. So we've decided to treat them as hybrids. This is what the construction industry would like to see. We set those now. We have not, the one question the council member was talking to me a little bit about before the meeting is, okay, when are they acting as a repair maintenance, and when is it considered construction? We're still working on those so that there's no question this time when we put the language in the statute what we mean. Those things are being worked out. But if it's in the repair maintenance category and they're purchasing, let's say they're doing work in Fountain Hills, but they're purchasing in Mesa the parts that they need to do the job, they will pay the idea that we're pitching. Again, this is not set in stone yet, but the idea that we're pitching is that they would be treated as retailers. And so I'm a guy, I purchase some parts, I take the total of those parts, and I add the property tax, or the sales tax rate that exists in Fountain Hills. And they would pay that and remit that to the Department of Revenue in your name. And so that would be revenue that you would receive. And then again, it's clear that if they're doing actual construction, then they would be, paying the way that they always have. And again, it's going to be going to the Department of Revenue, but it'll come back in your name. And they will remit that in their sales tax forms that they send into the Department of Revenue under the town's name. Now, the bright line that divides here, if they ever need to be licensed, if a contractor needs to be licensed because they're doing subcontracting work, that's the bright line as far as we're concerned. If they're doing that and they have to be licensed and they do this other thing, they go in and do a repair maintenance, that triggers them having to be the retailer. Okay, if I lost you totally, or does that make sense? Yeah. Okay.
Questions?
I can give a quick update on the other aspects of the change as well. Just real briefly, the audit portions of this are going quite well. We've started doing training of the auditors. All audits will be done under the auspices of DOR, although for multi-jurisdictional projects only, cities and towns have to get permission from DOR to conduct an audit. And they will be working with DOR staff. But if it's a city only, then DOR is likely to give the permission to the town to use their auditor to do that. Otherwise, all the audit stuff will be under the auspices of DOR, and we're working on how we together decide, which companies are going to be audited and which ones aren't. And that's actually going very well. We're happy with where we're at this time. The automation of remittance of sales tax, that's the whole reason that we've had to have a delay. We finally have, the Department of Administration has become involved in the project now, and just today we received from them an outline, and we're confident that if they can hit all the marks, they have milestones and specific tasks that are listed in a chart. If they hit all those milestones, we'll be ready to go in 2016. So we're very hopeful at this time that will happen. But if we start to get into trouble, we are going to let the cities and towns and the legislature and others know right away that we think we're getting into bad territory again. But again, we think that now that we have a plan, we feel much better about it. And then finally, the other aspect. Did I? Okay. I did all three. So if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right. Councilman Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So, being a town, and Repairman A lives in Fountain Hills, and is a repairman on a daily basis, and doesn't have a business license, which very easily could happen. How in the world will we ever trace their taxes? I mean, first of all, the transaction privilege tax is one of the biggest. I'm a general contractor, and it is the biggest mess of any tax that I've ever experienced in my life. And now it has been convoluted and stretched out and mixed up and poured out, and makes even less sense today, especially at the repairman's level. Why are we even messing with it?
Mayor, council member, unfortunately, that was a fight that we lost at the legislature. This is a direction that the industry wanted to go. We conducted a task force, and over the last, I've spent 3 years on this already, that's the direction they wanted to go. They didn't feel that if they're small and they're doing repairs, that they should be able to they felt that having to be licensed and having to pay that tax when they could just pay the tax to the retailer was too much for them, these small operations. And so we lost that battle at the legislature. That's the only explanation I can really give for that. So we tried, and
It certainly isn't your fault or problem. I followed it you're our town attorney for some time, and I know it was a mess, and it's still a mess. And if you can straighten it out, you are a genius.
Well, and my hope is that, the Department of Revenue, we've gained a much better working relationship with them now. And we have a greater understanding of each other's issues. And so I think that will help us. But it's going to take a while. This is going to continue for some time in the future. So.
All right. Any other questions for Tom or Ken? If not, thank you very much for
Thank you, ma'am.
bucking all that traffic and traveling out here to Fountain Hills. We really do appreciate you coming tonight. Thank you.
Pleasure.
At this time, we'll go to a call to the public. I believe we have a couple of residents who would like to speak.
Mayor, we have 2 cards, Charles Vassalero, followed by Lena Belliner.
Charles Vassalero, Algonquin Court, Fountain Hills. Before I start, I'd like to say the town belongs to the people, and you people are elected to represent our values. I find that very interesting. Sometimes it doesn't happen. I heard a rumor that a new town council member wants to have a town secondary property tax. It's amazing. The first thing this new member wants to do is create a new tax to burden our citizens and business owners with. Of course, what follows is spending the money and putting the town in debt. We elect new people with the hopes they will come up with new ideas to help the town grow and also make it business friendly, not chase them away with new and higher taxes. Scottsdale's tax is 7.95 and no one-family residential property tax. Our tax is 8.9. The Pavilions is spending $88 million for a facelift to attract new business. Their tax is 4.895. The tax and spend people will tell you this is a stable way of guaranteeing a steady income. What they will not tell you that once it is approved, we the taxpayers will never have a vote or say about that tax again. The council can raise the tax 2% a year, every year, if they want to, forever. We've all heard the stories about this tax, and we voted it down 3 times, last time by almost a 2/3 vote. What part of the word no don't you understand? The town council and town managers of the last 6 years this is my place, have learned how to keep the town mean and lean, the town budget mean and lean. We still have made many improvements. Construction and retail sales have started up again as the recession comes to an end. There is no need for this tax. We already have approved $10 million in school bonds, about $8 million in road repairs. Our property taxes will go up as assessed valuation increases. Add to that the new high water bills we are paying. Why would anyone in our town vote for this tax? It never fails to amaze me how some politicians and people find it so easy to spend other people's money. Everyone is affected by this tax. If you rent a house or an apartment, buy food or any product, use services like a plumber, a doctor, or even get a haircut, you're going to pay more. The business owners must pass this cost on to you. I don't even want to think about what this is going to do to people on fixed incomes and how it will hurt them. You were elected to represent the people, especially those who voted for you, not to pass your own personal agenda. The people have spoken 3 times on this issue. Enough is enough is enough. Thank you for your time. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. And they do not sell holiday trees, they sell Christmas trees. Good night.
All right, thank you, Charlie. Next.
Lena Belliner.
Hard to get up. Bones are stiff. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Last night, our community center was the site of a community meeting that was invaded by bullhorn-carrying illegal aliens, bussed into our community by the ACLU, and encouraged by left-wing liberals. They were rude, crude, and insulting. They slovenly disrespected our buildings by changing their children's diapers on the floor leading into the meeting room. They threatened to, quote, get certain individuals, even stating, "We know where you live." They chanted and criticized America at the end of the meeting, shouting derogatories accusing our community, Sheriff Joe, and the law enforcement community of racism. I witnessed several children encouraged by their parents to be openly disrespectful, and some to insult the sheriff by calling him, quote, the biggest criminal in the United States. This was after the sheriff politely shook their hand and gave them a keepsake. Mind you, they were children, openly encouraged to disrespect authority. These illegals did not come to hold an honest dialogue. They came to disrespect and create chaos, and may I add, with the apparent support of the Federal Monitor. Our mayor was present last night. One former mayor was present. 2 former council members were present. Our sheriff was present. Our law enforcement was present. But why no current council people? Were you aware of that important meeting? Why was the Fountain Hills Times not present? Last night's event, coupled with the gay and lesbian display of a few weeks ago, and the firing of an admired teacher, has stripped this community of its peace and tranquility. This community has been violated, and it will never be the same. There will be more of these vulgar displays if we do not unite as a community and fight against the abhorrent behavior, abuse of power, and federal discrimination of our sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena. All right, anyone else?
No, Mayor.
All right, we'll go on to our consent agenda items. We have 4. May I have a motion to approve them as listed?
So moved.
Mayor, second.
Mayor.
All right, and I need a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember DePorter?
Yes.
Councilmember Magazine?
Yes.
Councilmember Leger?
Yes.
Councilmember Hanson? Vice Mayor Yates?
Aye.
Councilmember Brown?
Aye.
Mayor Kavanaugh?
Aye.
Mayor 7-0.
Mayor.
We'll go on to our regular agenda items.
Mayor, excuse me.
Yes?
I'd like to ask, just for some direction as a newbie, on the consent agenda items, is there no discussion allowed?
There's only discussion if you choose to pull something off of that and put it on the regular agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry you didn't know that.
No, I'm learning.
Number 5, consideration of accepting 2 sculptures titled George Washington and Thomas Jefferson for placement in Fountain Park.
Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council, again, you have 2 art pieces for consideration tonight. Community Services Director has a presentation.
Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council, bear with me just a second. In your packet, I attached a letter from the chair of the Public Art Committee that details the 2 particular pieces. First of all, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson are 2 bronze sculptures. They're life-size. They were created by Colorado artists George and Mark Lundeen. They're being donated by local residents. There's a fundraising campaign going on now. The Public Art Committee is requesting that the town agree to accept and place them on public display in Fountain Park. This is a picture of one of the pieces and a picture of the other piece. The intent is to put these in an area up by that site, which is kind of in the southwest corner where the other presidents are located. They were valued at $80,000 with an annual cost for insurance of $344. With that, I would be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, I understand from there's no, I thought Sandy Thompson was here. I guess she's,
She had to leave,
okay.
unfortunately.
I understand that they've almost reached their goal.
That doesn't surprise me a bit.
Yeah. Questions for Mark? Yes, Councilman. Yeah.
Just a statement that last night I was at the FHCCA board meeting, and they are almost at their goal, and it never ceases to amaze me how quickly they can get to $80,000 to raise the money for this. So it's fantastic. I think they'd be a valued addition to that area. Thanks.
Okay, our own Park Rushmore, right? Any more questions? Any other comments on the sculptures? If not, I need a motion to accept.
So moved.
Mayor, second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Consideration of a special event application and co-sponsorship for the Concourse in the Hills event presented by Peter Volney and the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Scottsdale to be held at Fountain Park on Saturday, February 7th, 2015, with a rain date of Saturday, February 14th, 2015. Ken?
Again, Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council, you have a request for a special event permit for the second annual concourse in the park on February 7th, and the Recreation Supervisor has any questions, or has be happy to answer any questions that you might have regarding the event.
All right.
I will just do a quick review. Thank you for having me this evening. Let's see. In your packet, there is a screenshot of the website for this year's event. Just as a quick review, the event is scheduled for February 7th, 2015 at Fountain Park from 10 to 2. Last year, the event had about 220 vehicles participate. This year, they're on track to have over 300. Last year, they had about a crowd of over 3,000. They're expecting over 5,000 this year. They have quite a few supporters in the community and surrounding areas, including Audi, Corvette, DeLorean, Ferrari, Jaguar, Lamborghini, Lotus, Maserati, Mercedes-Benz, Porsche, and Viper. We look forward to having them as part of our community. They were a very well-received event last year.
Okay. And Rachel, is it free for residents just to go in and?
It is. It's free. It's a free event for any attendees, resident or not.
Okay. Questions for Rachel? Have any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
No? Okay. Any other council discussion?
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Mack.
Just a general question. I'm certainly all for waiving the fees for this, but do we have a policy on that, on when we waive fees and when we don't for activities in the park?
Yes, Rachel, can you answer that question,
Sure, I can
please?
address that. We do have a policy in place. It was adopted this past August. The policy indicates that they do need to be affiliated with a nonprofit. In this case, it would be the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Scottsdale.
And so anybody that's not a nonprofit, they pay a fee?
Correct.
And just one additional question. How is the fee determined?
The fee is part of the fee structure that is proposed and adopted by the council each budget year. We have two sets of fees, one for a for-profit event, and then we do have fees for a nonprofit event should they choose not to request a waiver. So there are two different fee structures set.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Rachel? No? Then I get a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second.
Any other council discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
Great. Thank you,
Thank you,
guys.
Rachel.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Rachel.
For 7 and 8, there will be one staff report, and any speaker cards, anyone wishing to speak on the item will speak under number 7. I will open the public hearing regarding Ordinance 14-07, a text amendment to the Town of Fountain Hills zoning ordinance, Chapter 6, Sign Regulations, Section 6.08B.13 and 6.08.D3. The amendments extend the expiration date to December 31st, 2015 for A-frame signs and banners for special sales events.
Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council, again, Senior Planner has a report concerning this text amendment and recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor.
members of the council. This is a public hearing in consideration of ordinance 1407, which are text amendments to the zoning ordinance that extend the expiration dates on commercial A-frame signs and special events banners. Section 608B13 relates to the A-frame signs, and Section 608D3 relates to the promotional banners. Since the current sign ordinance was adopted in 2009, these two sign types were typically given annual expiration dates of December 31st. However, in 2012, the Town Council agreed to a 2-year extension to December 31st, 2014, and that's why we're here tonight. You can see here is a brief listing of the extensions that have been granted by Council. This year's request is similar to past requests for a 1-year extension from December 31st, 2014 to December 21st to 31st, 2015. Staff was directed by a previous town manager to be lenient during these last couple of years, to let things go and see how these two ordinances would work. As you can see by the next slide, this has resulted in continued poor compliance regarding A-frame signs. Staff is requesting a more proactive approach in the future if the council decides tonight to grant this. As can be seen by the top chart, there's been no appreciative difference in A-frame sign compliance. In fact, it's slowly getting worse. Compliance is currently at about 20%. Banner compliance, however, is gradually getting better. It's become relatively manageable, and as you can see by the second chart, compliance is a little over 60%. Still nothing to brag about, but a lot better than it was last time. Staff feels that 5 years is enough time to assess the business community's ability to self-police and abide by the A-frame ordinances, and it's apparent that they can't do that. The business community has, however, apparently begun to embrace the banners provisions and should be probably permitted to continue with those use. Planning and Zoning Commission recommended an additional stipulation that the compliance rate for A-frame signs be flipped to an 80% compliance rather than 80% non-compliance this year, or the extension next year should not even be considered. Draft Ordinance 1407 outlines all those changes, including P&Z's recommendation, and that is also in your packet. Staff recommends that the council approve both the expiration extensions for 1 year until December 31st, 2015, subject to the additional stipulation that P&Z has recommended, and code enforcement be reauthorized to enforce it a little more strictly. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Bob. I just have a couple questions. When I was at the PNC meeting and I heard a lot of discussion there, and I know that they kind of passed this reluctantly because they were very disturbed by the amount of noncompliance, as was I. Now, I did speak to the staff in reference to how we handle dog licenses and business licenses, because when I did talk to some of the business owners, I know it's only $5 for the sticker, and they know the size of the A-frame that they have to have, and they know where they have to put it. And there's no excuse for putting it in the wrong place. That's obvious. As far as the sticker go, I get busy, I forgot, I didn't have anybody to go down and do it. So I was wondering if we might consider some sort of notices, either in the form of robocalls or in the form of actual mailed notices, just like we do for dog licenses. I understand we do a renewal notice, and then we do, if necessary, we do a follow-up for those who haven't paid, and then robocalls. And I was told by the staff that the robocalls actually work quite well. So I was just thinking we have to do something else other than just send our code enforcer out to,
Unfortunately,
look at all the
with an A-frame signs, they have to be in the system in order to get the robocall. So they have to at least gotten a permit at least once.
Right.
That's our biggest issue at this point. Is a lot of them haven't, because maybe they didn't realize they needed that sticker or that permit, but they have to be in the system to get the robocall.
Okay.
But we don't have that set up, no, not right now.
Well, I'm just suggesting that maybe we could do something like that to get more compliance, assuming that they're just forgetting, and I guess with some of them it's easy to forget. We tried to make it easy with just $5, but, that seems like they don't take that too seriously. So that was my suggestion. And the other question I had was, were there any violations on those digital boards? Was that part of this?
It's not part of this permit, but no,
It's
there
not part
weren't.
of this permit, okay. All right, then I won't talk about that. Any questions for Bob? Councilman Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. So I studied the permits issued and the total sign displayed. If you go back to that slide, you'll see in 2013 on the A-frame signs, the permits issued were 59, but there was no survey that year, unfortunately, which that's the most permits ever issued, and almost within 5 of the total displayed in 2011, 2010. And you go down onto the banners and you look at 2013, there were actually more permits issued than the banners displayed the year before. Is there any explanation for this?
I think that the banner permits have actually, a lot of people are coming in and asking about them now. Like I said, that seems to be getting more and more manageable. And we loosened up the banners, if you recall, to allow for the more promotional banners to go up, whereas in previous years we didn't even have that. They just weren't allowed. The only types that were allowed were the grand openings. So I think everybody has begun to understand that we do let them have those banners if they come in and get the permits, so they've been doing that.
Well, but it was 2013. Well, let's talk specifically banners. In 2013, we had 39 permits issued, and in 2014, we had 17 and 28 displayed, 11 violations. I don't, if we could figure out what prompted the permits that were issued in 2013 to be almost greater than the number of actual signs and banners displayed, we might be able to find a sensible solution to the problem.
My expectation would be the enforcement in 2012 is what prompted the 2013 permits.
And did we have enforcement in 2012?
Yeah.
I thought that was when we
were slack, but that was right after. You see, we only had 77% in violation that year. But that was right after. That was right after the council made the big warning.
Only 77%. I like that a lot. And I'm going to close with just one simple thing, and that is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing year after year after year, expecting a different solution. And so far, I'm not seeing any of this, and I certainly don't have any recommendation to staff or to the council on how to resolve it. It's a shame that when we had them off the streets, we let them put them back on, and that's all I will say about it. Thank you.
Mayor.
Bob, do they all expire at the same time, or is that when they come in?
Yeah, it's an annual expiration at the end of each year.
Oh, so everybody pretty much knows in a certain month, and that is which month?
A-frames. A-frames. Banners are only good for a couple of weeks a month.
But so the sticker, does it?
It expires at the end of each year.
It expires a year from when they get it?
Calendar year.
Okay, so they don't all expire at the same time?
Right.
Okay.
Well, they do. They all expire December 31st.
Okay, all right. That's what I was asking. Thanks. Councilman Leger.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm certainly in favor of extending this for another year under the conditions that have been stated. We do have a policy. We do have an enforcement policy, and I strongly recommend, as staff has recommended, that we begin enforcing that policy to see if there can be an impact on compliance. That being said, I had asked Bob for some specific numbers. He had shared this with the rest of the council. And when you look at these numbers, they're quite revealing. Of the 104 violations that were reported, 77 of those were related to either the signs did not have a permit or that the signs had permits that were outdated. Now, along the lines of what the mayor was saying, I would agree that we probably need to look at that particular process. And What I would like to suggest is, in addition to the staff recommendations, that we also place on our motion a stipulation that staff has 90 days, for example, to come back with a recommendation in terms of enhancing permitting. So in essence, the 77 violations consist of signs that don't have permits, so that means they're completely illegal, and others that have permits are outdated. I had an opportunity to chat with staff today, and along the lines of the question the mayor asked, we do have a process in place right now. We use the Munis system annually for notifying businesses that they need to renew their business license. Now, that's something that we're doing currently. And if we could dovetail onto that, for example, and have an additional criteria on that, for example, do you currently have an AFRM, as a checklist? And if they do, the annual business license is $35. Simply, if they have an AFRM, they would be charged an additional $5. It would go along with this annual process that we engage in with reestablishing business license. Now, for some of us that have some history here, we know the reason for the permitting. It didn't even cover our costs. The reason for that, as we may recall, it was about education. It was an opportunity for people once a year to come back and come to the counter and receive education. I don't think that's user-friendly. I'd like to see a different system in place. And, for example, if we can tag this along with the business license process renewal, we could then, when we're sending them the business license back, we could then just attach bullet points that indicate some of the statistics, not statistics, but some of the requirements around this. So I would agree with Councilman Brown. If you always do what you always done, we'll always get what we always got. And I think enforcement is going to really help with the issues. But with respect to permitting, it will always be, I think, an inconvenience for businesses. First of all, they'll say, well, when does my permit expire? Well, you said December 31st, and should I come in? So in a nutshell, I would advocate with staff recommendations and adding a stipulation to that would give staff some time to come back with a recommendation for how to deal with permitting. I just used a specific example that I think would be user-friendly, and I think it would not be a burden on staff to utilize a process like that. Thank you, Mayor.
Madam Chair. Mayor.
Councilman Magazine.
All of us, whether we were members of SPAC at the time or of this council, very much in favor of economic development, approved economic development strategies and so on, want to see more businesses in town, want to see the retail establishments be extremely successful. I'm concerned about a few things. One is that we have a reputation, apparently, of not being business friendly. I've heard this from a lot of people. I've never heard any specifics, and I'd really like to hear those. My question, so therefore, I'm in favor of the P&Z recommendation, but with some trepidation. I will confess that I don't think the A signs do anything to enhance the beauty of our town, and I don't know if they work. I've talked to several store owners and managers, and what I got in response was a very wishy-washy kind of, well, we think it helped, and I don't think there's any way we'll ever be able to measure that, but it is an issue. We have one code enforcement officer, correct? Can we really expect one person with that kind of workload in a town of 23,000 to go around to, how many retail establishments do we have?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you.
A lot.
A lot.
And the question is, can one individual really have an impact on bringing about any change? And I agree with the other council members who have said this, doing the same thing over and over again is just a big waste of time. I also wonder whether or not the chamber has been involved in any way. Have we called upon the chamber to be active with regard to trying to press among their membership enforcement of these regulations?
That was one of the things that the chamber said they would do when we adopted the ordinance, would be to work with their members to at least get their membership up to speed on this. And we gave them a pile of flyers and things like that, but we haven't actually done any meetings really with them since then.
Well, I want to suggest that we follow up with the chamber and as well as the Business Alliance and tell them how important this is. I assume that council is going to approve this for one more year with the stipulations placed on it by P&Z. And I think they have to know that we're pretty serious, that we pass regulations for a reason. And I think the Chamber and the Business Alliance could do a lot more than they've apparently done.
All right, and as we all know, the Chamber now has a new CEO, and I've met with him several times, and he seems extremely willing to help. So I think that's a great suggestion, that we reach out to Scott and reach out to John from the Business Alliance, and I'm sure that they could help us out with that. Other than that, besides Roy, Ken, there are other staff members that assist him at times doing this?
There are a few other people who are authorized code officers. We have an engineering officer. We have a building code officer. They're all authorized as code officers, but they have their own little specialties. They could be, I suppose, created into a task force for a couple of weeks to do that.
Just for a couple of weeks, right, okay.
Mayor, could I follow up?
And
I'm sorry.
the only other question I was going to ask in relation to what Councilman Leger said, do you think that 3 months would be an adequate time for, I believe he recommended 3 months. Do you think that would be adequate time for staff to kind of be up to speed on this, or?
Probably. Does it have to be a good idea?
Mayor, if I may, I suggested 3 months to come back with a recommendation
Yes.
for us, basically. And I think it's really important because when you really look at this, how large is the problem? The problem primarily, 75% of it is with respect to permitting. And if we can automate that, then we can reduce the amount of staff time. And as Councilman Magazine said, in terms of being down on staff, I mean, to me, seems to be where the issue is. And I'll give the benefit of the doubt to the business owners to saying, you know, maybe it's not the best user-friendly process to come in. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, the 3 months basically was to say, that was an idea I put on the table. We're not problem solving here. Perhaps staff can come back in 3 months to tell us how perhaps we can dovetail the permitting process, automate it, incorporate it into business license, which runs pretty smooth. I've tracked that for years. So that's the 3 months.
Right. And I know that the staff is also working on ways to improve that. Talking to one staff member, she mentioned to me that now they are trying to put together the robocalls that will go out a couple of weeks before anything is due, so that they get kind of a head start on reminder, your business license or your dog license, whatever is coming up for renewal, rather than waiting until afterwards, which is, of course, makes great sense to do that. Councilman Magazine.
Yeah, one other follow-up. I'm a little concerned that with one code officer, and you mentioned the possibility of a few others helping out, it would be helpful to know, and I don't mean right now, but what does that mean they won't be doing? I don't have a real feel for all of their responsibilities. And if this is just a sweep at one time and we can bring about some results, then I think it's certainly worth doing. But it requires ongoing vigilance. It means people probably aren't doing some other things they need to be doing, particularly with a small staff. And I think it'd be important for us to know that.
Councilman Yates?
Madam Mayor, I was going to ask, do we need to get out of the public hearing first before we make a motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Do we have any speaker cards on this?
No, Mayor.
No, okay. Any other council discussion? Yes, okay.
Just a couple things. Having been on the most previous sign committee, there were a number of business owners that were on there that really spoke to how they personally saw that this really helped their business by the ability to put out like what maybe daily specials, you know, so much off of a fax or that type of thing. So they had a lot of good examples of the way that it was a positive impact. And I think if, hopefully with Bob's help, we start getting the word out there that enforcement that was relaxed for quite some time is no longer going to be relaxed. And I don't think it'll take a lot of people having their signs picked up or being fined. The word's going to get out in the community, in the business community as well, that, well, we need to start being a little bit more careful because they are starting to enforce the ordinance. And if we have an ordinance, it's our responsibility to enforce it. regardless of, how many people we have or don't have, like Bob said, then maybe some of the other ones can, double task. And if they're just out and they see a violation, it's not a big production to just even pay a call to, the business owner and start being a little bit more out there in the community, being sign vigilant.
And we also want to be fair to the business people that are complying, who say that's not fair, that I'm following all the rules and no one else is, and why should I bother doing it? And then we start losing more and more people that are complying, right? Any other comments or?
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, Councilman Brown.
Yeah, I've got one more comment that, we continually hear business unfriendly rolled across the table in the town of Fountain Hills, and I once again put the challenge out. I think we are probably one of the most business-friendly towns in the state of Arizona. I mean, we reach out to our businesses, we help our businesses, we watch out for our businesses, we attempt every time. I mean, I've got 2,080 hours logged on sign committees in the last 10 years. And so far we haven't resolved the A-frame, but we are not a business unfriendly town, and we need to quit talking about it, we need to quit publishing it, and we need to start turning that statement around to, hey, listen, we are a business friendly town, and we are working with our people, and we want you to come to town. So let's turn that one comment around. And as far as the A-frames go again, I agree with the mayor. We should not be punishing or shaking our fingers at the guys that are truly doing it right. We need to be enforcing our ordinance. It's a law, and we need to enforce it, and we need to turn it around.
Any other comments? And no speaker cards have come up. Okay, with that, I will close the public hearing. And consideration of ordinance 14-07 as just discussed. Any further council discussion? If not, entertain a motion.
Did you want to make it, Henry? Because I like that.
Sure,
Like your motion.
I'll attempt it. I move to approve staff recommendations, including P&Z recommendations, to adhere to enforcement policy, our existing policy, and also add a stipulation that staff comes back with a recommendation for us regarding revising or enhancing or streamlining the permitting process.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
All right, thank you. Discussion with possible direction to staff relating to any item included in the League of Arizona Cities and Towns Weekly Legislative Bulletin. Ken?
Nothing, Mayor.
Nothing, but it was great to have our League of Cities coming out to Fountain Hills and answering some of our questions. That was great. Now, the next part is, as I explained to the two new councilmen, this is the time when you get to, well, first let me ask Ken if he has anything.
Nothing, Mayor.
Next. Okay, then I'll go on to anyone else want to talk about recent activities, things that you've done, and then I will do mine. I know Councilman DePorter and I shared a meeting with the volunteer coffee. If you want to, you take it.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Heather Ware put on the volunteer holiday coffee, and Mayor Kavanaugh and I attended, and it was well attended. I got to meet Craig's father-in-law, sat with him at the event. It was a packed room. All the volunteers, the many drivers for the town, and all the different volunteer organizations we have, it was really well done.
Okay, anyone else want to go before I go? No? Okay, well, you already talked about the volunteer coffee, which is always great, always very well attended. I was the speaker, but it was just really a question and answer time about things that are going on in town, and they love to do that. I also attended a Hanukkah celebration at Chabad at Fountain Hills with my husband John for the lighting of the first candle. We were both honored to be invited again. There were lots of kids there, which is always wonderful, and we got to enjoy the delicious homemade food, especially Tzippi's latkes. I was also a speaker at Noon Rotary. I gave them an update on the town. Noon Rotary, by the way, is responsible each year for the poinsettia tree that you see on the avenue, and they also sponsor the bell ringers that you see in front of the grocery stores. I'll actually be out ringing that bell on Saturday morning at Bashas' at 10 o'clock. Last year, I got pretty much a full bucket of coins, so I'm challenging everybody to come out and deposit something in the bucket. Stop by and say hello. I'll be out there with my Santa hat on. And if there's nothing else, on behalf of the Town Council, I want to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas, a wonderful Hanukkah week, and a Happy New Year. And a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.